Rising 14,179 feet above Northern California, there stands a mountain that refuses to be just a mountain. Some call it sacred, others call it supernatural, and a surprising number of people believe it's hollow, home to an ancient civilization living in crystalline cities beneath the ice and rock, Mount Shasta. For thousands of years, it has commanded attention not just for its beauty, but for something else, something harder to define. Indigenous peoples considered it a dwelling place of the Great Spirit. Modern mystics claim it's one of Earth's most powerful energy vortexes. UFO enthusiasts document unexplained lights dancing across its slopes. And scientists, they're watching it carefully because this sleeping giant could wake up at any time. Today, we're climbing into one of America's most enigmatic landmarks, a place where geology meets mythology, where science encounters the unexplained, and where every answer seems to generate three new questions. This is the story of Mount Shasta, and it's far stranger than you might imagine. Mount Shasta sits in Siskiyou County in far northern California, about 60 miles south of the Oregon border. If you're driving Interstate 5 through this region, you can't miss it. And that's part of what makes this mountain so special. Unlike most major peaks that hide among other mountains in a range, Shasta stands essentially alone. It rises over 10,000 feet above the surrounding terrain, visible from more than 100 miles away on a clear day. This isolation gives it an almost otherworldly presence, like a massive white sentinel watching over Northern California. The mountain is actually the second highest peak in the Cascade Range, after Mount Rainier in Washington. But what it lacks in altitude compared to Rainier, it makes up for in sheer visual dominance. From certain angles, it appears to float above the landscape, especially when low clouds obscure its base. For the indigenous peoples of this region, the Shasta, Karuk, Modoc, and Wintu tribes, this mountain was far more than a geographical feature. It was Uitaku, the home of the Great Spirit. They believed the mountain was the center of creation itself, where the Creator descended to earth and made the animals, the fish, the trees, and eventually the first people. These weren't just stories. They were sacred truths that shaped entire cultures. Tribal members would not climb to the summit, considering the peak too holy for human feet. This reverence would continue for thousands of years, right up until European settlers arrived and began viewing the mountain through an entirely different lens. To understand Mount Shasta, we need to go back in time, way back, about 590,000 years ago, to be precise, when this region looked nothing like it does today. Mount Shasta is a stratovolcano, built layer by layer through countless eruptions over hundreds of thousands of years. Each eruption added another layer of lava, ash, and volcanic rock, slowly constructing the massive peak we see today. It's actually not one volcano, but 4 overlapping volcanic cones that have merged together over time. The main summit is the youngest and most prominent cone. But if you look carefully at the mountain's western flank, you'll notice Shastina, a smaller but still massive cone with its own summit crater at 12,330 feet. Shastina formed roughly 9,500 years ago, which in geological terms was practically yesterday. What makes Mount Shasta particularly fascinating to geologists is its size and complexity. The mountain contains an estimated 85 cubic miles of material, making it the most voluminous stratovolcano in the Cascade Range. All that rock, all that ice, all built one eruption at a time. The mountain hosts 7 named glaciers, including the Whitney Glacier, the longest glacier in California, at about 2.5 miles. These glaciers are remnants from the last ice age, slowly carving away at the volcanic rock even as the mountain continues its geological evolution. Beneath all this rock and ice lies something that keeps scientists very interested, an active magma chamber. Because despite its peaceful appearance, Mount Shasta is not extinct, not dormant, but active. The question isn't whether Mount Shasta will erupt again. The question is when. The most recent confirmed eruption occurred in 1786, witnessed by French explorer Jean-François de Galaup, Comte de la Pérouse, from his ship off the coast. Before that, significant eruptions occurred around 1250 AD and earlier. Geologists have identified at least 10 significant eruptions in the past 3,400 years. The United States Geological Survey classifies Mount Shasta as a very high-threat volcano, not because an eruption is imminent, but because when it does erupt, the consequences could be severe. The mountain sits relatively close to populated areas, and Interstate 5, a major transportation corridor connecting California, Oregon, and Washington, runs right past it. The primary dangers wouldn't necessarily be lava flows, which move slowly enough for evacuation. The real threats would be pyroclastic flows, superheated avalanches of gas, and volcanic matter that can travel over 100 miles per hour, and lahars, volcanic mudflows that can race down valleys, burying everything in their path. Mount St. Helens in 1980 showed the world what cascade volcanoes are capable of. Mount Shasta has produced eruptions of similar and even greater magnitude in its past. The mountain is continuously monitored with seismographs, GPS stations, and thermal sensors, watching for any sign that the giant is stirring. For now, Mount Shasta sleeps, but it's the kind of sleep where one eye remains open, and scientists are watching just as carefully. But Mount Shasta's mysteries go far beyond geology. For over a century, this mountain has been at the center of some of the strangest claims in American folklore, and the most persistent of these involves an ancient civilization supposedly living inside the mountain right now. The story begins with Lemuria, a hypothetical lost continent similar to Atlantis. According to 19th century occult theories, Lemuria existed in the Pacific Ocean millions of years ago before sinking beneath the waves. But according to legends that emerged in the early 1900s, some Lemurians didn't perish. They allegedly escaped to Mount Shasta, where they built a vast underground city called Telos. The modern version of this legend was largely popularized by Frederick Spencer Oliver in his 1905 book A Dweller on Two Planets, and later expanded by others, including Guy Ballard, who founded the I Am activity movement in the 1930s after claiming to meet a Lemurian ascended master named Saint Germain on the mountain's slopes. According to believers, these Lemurians are tall, elegant beings who occasionally venture to the surface, usually appearing as mysterious white-robed figures. They supposedly possess advanced technology and spiritual knowledge far beyond modern humanity. Some accounts claim they shop in local stores, paying with gold nuggets or strange currency, then vanishing before anyone can follow them. Local business owners in the town of Mount Shasta have heard these stories countless times. Some embrace the legends as good for tourism. Others roll their eyes. But ask around, and you'll find a surprising number of people who claim personal experiences they can't explain. Then there are the lights. Mount Shasta has been a hotspot for UFO sightings and unexplained aerial phenomena for decades. Witnesses report glowing orbs, strange formations of lights, and craft moving in ways that seem to defy physics, hovering, accelerating instantly, or vanishing without a trace. Some reports describe lights emerging from or disappearing into the mountain itself, fueling speculation about underground bases or interdimensional portals. Skeptics point out that many of these sightings occur during conditions that produce lenticular clouds, lens-shaped clouds that form around mountain peaks and can look remarkably like classic flying saucers, especially when illuminated by sunset or unusual atmospheric conditions. But not all sightings can be explained by clouds. In 1987, a group of climbers reported watching multiple luminous objects maneuvering around the summit for over an hour. In 2014, a professional photographer captured what appeared to be a disc-shaped object near the peak, an image that has been analyzed extensively with no definitive explanation. The mountain's isolation and frequent unusual weather conditions create an atmosphere ripe for misidentification. Temperature inversions can cause lights from distant towns to appear to float in the sky. Ice crystals can create stunning optical effects. And the human brain, when faced with something unfamiliar against the dramatic backdrop of a massive mountain, is prone to interpretation. Yet the reports continue. The Mount Shasta area consistently ranks among the top locations in California for UFO sightings. Whether you attribute this to genuine phenomena, natural explanations, or the power of expectation doesn't diminish the fact that something about this mountain invites people to look up and wonder what they're really seeing. Walk through the town of Mount Shasta today, and you'll quickly realize this isn't your typical mountain community. Crystal shops line the main street. Signs advertise aura readings, energy healing, and ascension workshops. The local culture is steeped in spirituality, and it's been this way for decades. Many spiritual practitioners believe Mount Shasta sits atop one of Earth's major energy vortexes, places where the planet's energetic field is said to be particularly strong and accessible. According to this belief system, there are only a handful of such vortexes worldwide, including places like Sedona, Arizona, Machu Picchu in Peru, and Mount Shasta. Believers claim that meditating or practicing spiritual work near Mount Shasta produces more profound experiences than elsewhere. They report feelings of heightened awareness, emotional releases, spiritual visions, and connections to higher consciousness. Some describe the sensation of being welcomed by the mountain itself, as if it possesses a form of awareness. The town attracts thousands of spiritual seekers each year, people searching for healing, transformation, or answers to life's deeper questions. Some come for a weekend retreat. Others relocate permanently, drawn by what they perceive as the mountain's unique energetic signature. Certain locations on the mountain hold special significance. Panther Meadows, at around 7,500 feet elevation, is considered particularly sacred, a natural cathedral where the veil between physical and spiritual realms is said to be thin. Visitors leave offerings, conduct ceremonies, and collect water from the springs, believed by some to have healing properties. Scientists studying these phenomena take a different approach. They acknowledge that being in nature, especially dramatic natural settings, has documented psychological and physiological benefits: reduced stress, lower blood pressure, improved mood. These effects are measurable and real. The question isn't whether people have meaningful experiences at Mount Shasta. Clearly, many do. The question is whether these experiences require supernatural or energetic explanations, or whether the power of expectation combined with the mountain's undeniable majesty creates a perfect environment for profound personal moments. What's certain is that people continue to seek something at Mount Shasta that they feel is missing elsewhere. Whether that something comes from the mountain itself or from within themselves remains open to interpretation. Beyond the legends and spiritual beliefs, Mount Shasta is also simply a magnificent place to explore. Thousands of people visit each year, not for mystical experiences, but for the pure joy of being in the wilderness. The most popular climbing route, Avalanche Gulch, attracts mountaineers from around the world. It's considered one of the more accessible major peaks in the Cascades, technical enough to be challenging, but possible for strong hikers with proper preparation. Still, don't mistake accessible for easy. The climb gains over 7,000 feet of elevation, crosses multiple glaciers, and exposes climbers to altitude sickness, unpredictable weather, and serious alpine hazards. Every climbing season, search and rescue teams respond to emergencies on the mountain. People get lost in whiteout conditions, suffer from altitude sickness, take falls on icy slopes, or simply underestimate the challenge. The mountain demands respect, and it has claimed lives over the years. For those not interested in summiting, the lower slopes offer spectacular hiking through ancient forests of Shasta red fir and mountain hemlock. Trails lead to waterfalls, alpine meadows bursting with wildflowers in summer, and viewpoints that showcase the mountain's dramatic geography. The town of Mount Shasta, with a population of around 3,500, serves as the gateway to all this adventure. It's an interesting mix of outdoor enthusiasts, spiritual seekers, artists, and longtime residents who've seen the town transform over the decades. Local perspectives on the mountain's mysteries vary widely. Some residents fully embrace the spiritual and supernatural elements, seeing them as essential to the town's identity. Others view these beliefs with affectionate skepticism, acknowledging that the legends bring tourism dollars while privately remaining unconvinced. And some find the whole thing frustrating, wishing their mountain town was known primarily for its natural beauty rather than underground civilizations. What most agree on is that the mountain itself transcends any single interpretation. Whether you come seeking ancient wisdom, challenging yourself physically, or simply experiencing natural beauty, Mount Shasta delivers something meaningful. The mountain, it seems, gives people what they're looking for, or sometimes what they need instead. So, what does science actually confirm about Mount Shasta's mysteries? Let's separate documented facts from appealing legends. First, Lemuria. The original concept of Lemuria was proposed by 19th-century scientists trying to explain the distribution of lemur fossils across India and Madagascar. They hypothesized a now submerged land bridge, which they called Lemuria. However, modern plate tectonics completely explained these fossil distributions without requiring a lost continent. Scientifically speaking, Lemuria never existed. The elaborate stories about Lemurian survivors building underground cities beneath Mount Shasta emerged entirely from occult literature, not from any archaeological, geological, or historical evidence. Despite over a century of claims, no credible evidence of underground cities, tunnels, or advanced ancient civilizations has ever been found at Mount Shasta. The UFO sightings and mysterious lights are more interesting because they involve observable phenomena. Many sightings have prosaic explanations: lenticular clouds, atmospheric optical effects, planets and stars viewed through unusual atmospheric conditions, aircraft navigation lights, or terrestrial light sources behaving unexpectedly due to temperature inversions. However, some sightings remain genuinely unexplained. This doesn't automatically validate extraterrestrial or interdimensional explanations. Unexplained simply means we don't currently have enough information to determine what was observed. The intellectually honest position is to acknowledge uncertainty rather than filling gaps with speculation. Regarding energy vortexes and spiritual experiences, science recognizes that natural environments, especially dramatic landscapes, significantly impact human psychology and physiology. Studies confirm that exposure to nature reduces stress hormones, lowers blood pressure, improves mood, and can facilitate meditative states. Mount Shasta's isolation, beauty, and dramatic presence create ideal conditions for profound personal experiences. Whether these experiences require metaphysical explanations or are fully explainable through psychology and neuroscience is where science and spirituality diverge. The scientific perspective doesn't diminish the mountain's significance. If anything, understanding the real geology, ecology, and psychology involved makes Mount Shasta more fascinating, not less. The mountain doesn't need to be supernatural to be extraordinary. So why does Mount Shasta continue to captivate our imagination? Why does this particular mountain attract legends, spiritual seekers, and curious visitors in ways that other equally impressive peaks do not? Part of the answer lies in the mountain's physical presence. That isolation, that dominance of the landscape, creates an almost magnetic effect on human attention. When something that massive stands alone, commanding the horizon for 100 miles in every direction, it demands to be noticed. It demands to be interpreted. Humans have always assigned meaning to dramatic natural features. Mountains, in particular, appear in sacred traditions worldwide. Olympus for the Greeks, Sinai for Abrahamic religions, Kailash for Hindus and Buddhists. Mountains bridge earth and sky. They endure when human civilizations rise and fall. They inspire both humility and aspiration. Mount Shasta fits perfectly into this archetypal pattern. Its snow-covered peak, glowing at sunset, does look otherworldly. The lenticular clouds that frequently form around it do look like something from a science fiction film. The way fog sometimes pours down its flanks, like a living thing, does seem supernatural. In an age where satellite imagery has mapped every square foot of Earth's surface, where we understand plate tectonics and atmospheric physics, where the planet holds fewer geographical mysteries than ever before, places like Mount Shasta offer something increasingly rare: ambiguity, room for wonder, space for stories that can't be definitively proven or disproven. Perhaps that's ultimately what draws people here. Not necessarily belief in underground cities or alien bases, but a hunger for mystery itself. A desire to stand in a place where not everything is explained, measured, and categorized, where the possibility of something more still exists. Whether Mount Shasta's magic is geological, supernatural, psychological, or some combination of all three, its effect is real. People leave different than they arrived, and in a world that often feels fully understood and slightly disappointing, that transformation, whatever its source, has value. Mount Shasta stands as it has for hundreds of thousands of years. Patient, powerful, and perpetually fascinating. It's an active volcano that could reshape Northern California with its next eruption. It's a challenging climb that tests mountaineers' skills and determination. It's a sacred site for indigenous peoples and spiritual seekers. It's a hotspot for unexplained phenomena that defies easy categorization. And perhaps most importantly, it's a place where multiple truths can coexist. The geologist studying its volcanic history and the mystic meditating at Panther Meadows are both experiencing Mount Shasta authentically. The skeptic explaining lenticular clouds and the believer describing interdimensional portals are both engaging with something real, even if they disagree on what that something is. In the end, Mount Shasta doesn't require our belief or our skepticism. It simply exists, magnificent and mysterious, inviting each visitor to find their own meaning in its slopes. The mountain offers no easy answers, only the opportunity to ask better questions. Whether it guards ancient secrets or is simply an extraordinary geological feature, whether it connects to other dimensions or just to our deep psychological need for transcendence, Mount Shasta endures. And it will continue long after our current theories, beliefs, and explanations have themselves become legend. Thanks for joining us on this journey into one of America's most enigmatic landmarks. If you enjoyed exploring the mysteries and realities of Mount Shasta, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into history's most fascinating places. What's your take on Mount Shasta? Natural wonder, spiritual power center, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you visited the mountain yourself. We'd love to hear about your experience. And if you want more mysterious mountains and unexplained places, check out our videos on the Bermuda Triangle, the Nazca Lines, or Skinwalker Ranch. Links are in the description. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes the best stories are the ones we can't quite explain.